Welcome to the Argosy podcast. Today, as our guest, we have Carl Prado from PE Tech Partners. Carl, welcome.
Thank you for having me.
It's really good to have you here. Carl, you've run A to Z business IT for a long time. What pulled you specifically to a deal environments, and what gap made you launch PE Tech Partners?
You know, the history of IT is like it was an evolution. I'm sure you've seen the same thing, Greg, where, you know, we sort of find the needs and then we start to fill the gaps. So what I kept on getting pulled into deal environments that were going sideways, a client would get acquired and they'd be running a diligence on a target and something would break. And every time I'd walk into the same nest, the technology was either a liability or an untapped asset, and nobody on the deal team knew how to deal with it.
Mhm.
At least not in the proper time frame that made sense. And so the gap, translation is that PE firms have operating partners, they have lawyers and bankers, but nobody owns the space between the tech stack and the deal outcome. And that's where PE Tech Partners sits.
Okay, wonderful. Thanks for that layout, the lay of the land there. You say no jargon, just results is kind of the motto for P Tech Partners. What does results mean in deal work? Does it mean deal velocity, risk reduction, fewer surprises in diligence, or a better pipeline visibility, or something else?
It really means time and money. In the deal, results are how fast you're able to get moving, to the close and what the, legal cost per transaction is. If you're finding tech risks before or after the close, are your portfolio companies operationally ready to defend and grow? I don't like to throw numbers out because a lot of people out there's a lot of people who, in the technology, AI, automation space that'll say, we can give you a 10, 25% reduction in legal fees per transaction for clients or run a tech-enabled diligence process. No, but the real money can be saved with just the beauty of working on a larger deal with, let's say, around a $50 million deal is that small incremental changes have large outcomes.
Yeah, it's a wonderful example and description there. So, PE Tech Partners promise is essentially your firm already owns the tools. We'll make them operate as one system. What are
Yeah,
the most common failure patterns you see?
that's a great question. Well, the firm has Deal Cloud or similar CRM, but the data is 3 months stale. Nobody trusts it. So the deals are tracked and someone's in inbox or shared spreadsheet, and the team can't move fast enough with the data that they don't trust. Or you've got something in the due diligence workflows that's really totally disconnected from the diligence checklist, and the documents are uploaded and questions are emailed, but nobody knows where to review, or creates an invisible dealing that nobody can see until the timeline slips. And the third is a handoff from diligence to integration. I think every person who's ever tried to run a security implementation finds it, you get the findings, but nobody's taking action post close, and the integrations fail not because there wasn't a plan, but because the intel didn't transfer to the actions.
Okay, gotcha. And could PE Tech Partners be affecting more than one deal? Or do you guys have as your clients these private equity firms that your work with
Yeah,
them could affect
that's our focus.
multiple?
We focus on advisory firms and PE firms and private equity. What we're looking at is securing the gaps and finding the risks there before they become a real issue.
So really firming up those systems really could be impacting multiple deals within a firm or deals going
Oh,
forward, right?
yeah. I mean, I'll give you a quick story. I mean, a client who would buy a mid-sized company would want to find out through the supply chain line, what other acquisitions could make sense to purchase along that way. And, that type of report could take about 100 hours for an analyst to do. And at the current analyst rates, it's about $10,000 report. By just building out the proper queries, we were able to build that out to about a 1 hour project where we could basically create the same work output that the 100 hours was doing. Now, that doesn't mean the analyst goes away or anything. Actually, we can use the analyst on other things. What it does mean is that instead of taking a month or two for somebody to come back to a deal, you can do it in a week. And instead of that, like if you're a small boutique firm and you may not have all the manpower that you need, now you can run that on multiple opportunities that you just didn't have the time or bandwidth to handle.
Wonderful. Gotcha. So it really is not so much getting rid of the human, but the human becomes a little bit more in control and saves a lot of time, right? Yeah.
Oh, it's funny. AI is not going to replace currently analysts, but
Mm,
what it can do is replace monitoring. And a lot of what's going on is trying to make sure that the deals stay on track. Hey, it's been 2 weeks and somebody hasn't gotten
yeah.
back to us. We should be touching base. Why did
Right.
that fall through the cracks? And that's where AI and automation can really come in to really, make everything a lot smoother.
Okay, and that leads really well into the next question. So maybe it's a little bit more detail upon about that falling through the cracks. But what's the hidden deal killer you see most often? Is it the security gaps, compliance risks, manual workflows, CRM hygiene? Maybe it's a couple of these things that pop up, but
Dirty data.
dirty data.
Dirty data is going to be where it comes through, or it's not residing all in one spot. It's like we were talking, it's stale. Somebody's got to change it. It's not living inside the data itself. It's living inside of their a personal spreadsheet or their contacts or in their inbox and hasn't been there so that the whole team can interact with it. And that can be challenging.
Gotcha. Very good. So for PE tech partners specifically, what's the biggest growth bottleneck right now? Is it acquiring the right PE M&A clients or proving ROI, delivering capacity? What's the biggest bottleneck for you to grow PE tech partners?
It's always finding the right deal partner, the right partners. I mean, we're in a high trust age industry. It's not, people were brought in basically because people referred us in, or we were in the right rooms and we gave them the right, and they liked how we spoke and they gave us a shot.
Hmm.
Um, just staying in front of those, 30, 40 or PE advisories and, getting our call in.
Gotcha. So when you're trying to scale, what's harder, selling outcomes or delivering transformations and why?
Kind of well, delivering is always selling is easy. You can promise the world. Delivery of those outcomes is really the challenge because you've got to have buy-in from the beginning. You've got to have the whole team's got to be on the same point of that. So, the bigger the team, the more challenging it is to get the outcomes. But the nice thing is if you start with low-hanging fruit, you start with smaller situations and you start to build up wins, you create trust, and then trust allows those outcomes to become bigger. I think where we see failure is when somebody try, and this is even internal versus an external project. If you want to take one piece of advice, if you're doing any type of automation, it's to proceed to not do the whole thing at once, but to do it in small steps. I
Mhm.
can't tell you, even before this, of how many quote unquote software modernizations have failed. And the failure rate on automation right now in this AI space is pretty high. It's actually around 75% because people are trying to get too much out of it or they don't have the right understanding of what the tools could do.
Right. Yeah, it's not mature enough or they don't
Well, it's not mature. It's just people's expectations of what it is.
so it's
They
not so
expect,
much maturity.
yeah.
Yeah, gotcha. Yeah. So walk through a typical deal. Where do you see the biggest time leaks is it from origination to close? Where are the biggest time leaks?
Probably in the beginning, getting the right sources, getting the right information in from the client, getting all of that there because the team, and then it might be the analyst working on their, to answer your question, Greg, it's a lot of different things because every firm's a little
Hmm.
different. People have that part locked down, but then they may have their issue might be in turning around those after ingesting those SIMs and being able to go ahead and create the right type of IC memo that they can act on. It depends on what they're using, the size and the scope of the deals. So if you're doing a lot of private equity, private deals, a lot of that information is not public. You have to sort of be able to infer some of that data from other sources. If it's public, it's a lot easier, obviously, because trades are going out. You can match like for like. The other challenges are going through the deal room and making sure of that. Now, there's a lot of good tools out there, but there's a lot of hype and stuff along those lines too. And you want to make sure that they're giving you good data to respond back to.
Okay, good. Awesome. So there's a nice breakdown. So what site claims or as you look at your website, the ptechpartners.com, the assessment to, it claims that assessment to acceleration is 90 days. What are the first quick wins you aim for in the first, say, 2 to 4 weeks?
First 2 to 4 weeks, we're really spending time getting on the page with the client, finding out what we're really understanding where their workflow is going through. We work One of the reasons that we stay in PE spaces because that's all we do, you know. And when you focus on that, that's what makes this different than when you work with an IT partner who's managing, PE and they may be doing a dental suite or whatever, you can't really learn the deal flows and everything else that's going on there. So you start to you meet with the teams, you understand where they're coming from, what the challenges are. So that takes about 2 to 3 weeks of going through it, and then at that point you've come in with a plan. Actually, before then, you start to get a pretty good feel for that,
Ooh.
and then you start again, like I said, you start to implement it. So it could be just as simple as creating a tracker for the deals,
Mm,
together systems to make this, why isn't the information getting into the CRM and what can we do to make that easier?
yeah.
Is that, can we make that work inside of team, if all the information, if all the meetings are being done in teams, do we even really need to have a CRM in the way? Because we could pull that data if it's being recorded and have that available to them in business, in just even business intelligence.
So it really shows really specializing really provides benefit for the clients.
Exactly.
Even though it does still take some time to get on the right page because you need to know all their details. You're there like day one, knowing the terminology and everything with them. So where's the biggest disruption in this space right now? Are competitors winning with AI first deal tools, generic automation agencies, platforms bundling AI agents into CRMs and VDRs? What's
Well,
the biggest
part of the
disruption right
problem
now?
right now, it's AI. There's two different types of implementation that's going on here. There are people who are actually trying to look and understand the deal flows, understand what's going on, and and seeing where the bottlenecks are. But there are people who are throwing AI at everything and expecting to have an amazing result. So if you're on a team of 12, for example, and one guy is using AI and or gal, and they're getting 30% faster results, but the rest of the team is still at the same speed, you didn't increase anything because it's all locked into the rest. It's a chain. So they're all gonna go at the same so one guy can do their work a little faster, but the team is getting no benefit from that. And that's sort of what's going on right now, even inside of these AI agents being thrown inside of these tools
Hmm.
without a clear definition of what they're trying to find. So what like I said before, AI is really good at saying, "Hey, look at this. Hey, look at that." Or, "Hey, monitor all of these things." Going through a checklist, it's great for that. AI is not a strategist. AI is not gonna do that, and that's part of the dangers is when you rely too much on those things without having, an understanding of where the results could come from.
Well, thanks, Carl. Appreciate that realistic view on where AI can be used. So, what are competitors doing that you respect, and what do you think is dangerous hype for deal teams?
Well, I sort of hinted on the first part of it. Like, I guess maybe like I had said before that question, and I apologize, was that, the people who are doing it right, whether it's internal or external, are breaking it down. They're going down. It's a reorganization. So, there's three different types of companies out there when AI is introduced. Let's say you have a company of 1,000 people, and somebody says, "We're going to use AI. We're going to reduce our workload. We only need 500 people now, and we get the same amount of work, so we're more efficient." You know, and then we look at the team that's 10 people and they've never had anything else. So they built AI from the beginning. So now they're at like 100-person team. And you're like, oh, well, they're doing better. But that 10-person team can't really compete with the 500-person team at the same level. But the danger is that 1,000-person team that reluctantly turned away AI originally said, you know what? We need to reorganize from the ground up. We're going to keep our people, but we need to change our work process and flow so that we can really utilize AI in an intelligent way. Now that 1,000-person is a 10,000-person firm, as opposed to that other team that cut half of their firm to save money. Those type of companies have a high risk of going out of business because they're not really looking at opportunities. They're just looking at keeping what they status quo. So those are, that type of strategy is what you sort of want to look at here. And so that comes back to, the people who are selling AI saying you can reduce your man, what was I say, your head count by X and still have the same results. It's
Hmm.
really backwards thinking. What you should be able to say is with your current head count, you can do 10 times what you're currently doing. Now, what are your goals now that you can do 10
Hmm.
times or double? We get like I said, the numbers are like, oh, you can 10x or 2x. It's all over the place. But the answer is that we all know that if it's done correctly, you can have a significant increase. What that actual number is, I don't think it's been measured correctly yet.
Okay, so don't cut headcount, but maybe go back and retool like that 1,000 person firm
Or
did.
even
And
if
they
you're,
kind of
even if you're a team
retool.
company, and let's say you get 30% more increase out of your out of your processes. That's like adding 6 more people to your team. What would 6
Yeah.
more people to your team do?
Yeah. Wonderful insight there on how you should go about using AI and how that applies to actually your staff. So your blog mentions a case agentic AI deal workflows are becoming the baseline, separating faster firms from slower ones. But what does agentic really mean in deal ops beyond chatbots?
Well, that's what I was saying. With AI, what it can really do very well is monitor the whole process and make sure that things are going, that you can track deal flow and handle more deal flows at the same time. So, where a chatbot, you'd ask it a question and, it gets back, and it gives you an answer, and that's kind of where it stops. An agentic workflow just means, hey, we
Mhm.
just signed up a client. Well, when you signed up a client, when you signed that PDF, automatically a trigger came in to open up a folder system for that client. And then that sent out letters to the attorneys. It sent out letters to all of the key players for all the things that they're going to start to need to do to get that in there, whether that's getting the data for the data room, or whether that's the due diligence or any of the other questions that would come up, banking, all of those things. Instead of having like 50 phone calls, you can be down to basically signing a contract and getting it done. Because a lot of this stuff, that's where you start to see the time management savings and the efficiencies.
Yes. So
Not on the
thanks
sex
for
It's not on the sexy things, it's on the boring things that you're paying somebody a lot of money to do because they have to do it because they don't have any other alternative.
yeah, it goes back to your monitoring answer before. It's great for monitoring, right? The things that,
It's
just
great for
keeping track
monitoring
of the
and
whole
doing tasks, but it is
task.
but you don't really need to have incredible strategic insight to create a folder.
Right.
But it's
Exactly.
important. You
Yeah.
need those folders, and you need to know where that data is resting. Then you can it makes when you're organized, things move faster.
Great. Yeah, that's a great explanation between what chatbots are and agentic AI is. So that's wonderful. All those tasks that agentic AI can do, not just answer questions, right? Okay. Very good. So the follow-up to that is what do you think about security and SOC level expectations when AI agents touch real deal data?
It's gotta be managed. You can't just throw this up against the wall and hope for something. You gotta treat AI like you treat an employee. So if your employee, you hire somebody new day one, first of all, before you hire them, you do a background check. You say, do you have, check and make sure that the AIs that you're working with are SOC compliant or meeting your level of, expertise, and then the other question that you want to start doing is, what can you trust them with? You need to start testing them and managing those systems. So just setting them out willy nilly, just because you're thinking if results is sort of panic. And that's always been a security issue. Security, 90% of what the bad guys would like you to do is panic and feeling like you're not automating fast enough. Not saying not to do any action is good, but it's not. But also not, but just to rush for the sake of rushing is also bad.
Gotcha. According to what your answer earlier, the biggest failure point is dirty data, right? Talk about CRM, hygiene, and lack of operating discipline. If a firm wants to adopt agentic AI safely, what must be true first?
Well, the data, you've got to start with, again, nothing sexy about this. It's going to come back to clean data, clean processes. If you don't have a good process and you put angenic AI on top of it, what you're going to do is you're going to compound the issue. You're not going to fix the issue. You're just going to
Right.
show the weaknesses faster, incredibly, and you're going to, within a short period of time, you're going to find that these issues are quite.
And what's a starter agentic workflow you deploy first if the data is clean? Because going back to your point, it's got to be good. It's got to
Again,
be
it's
right.
really on what the client is looking to do. It's usually either in the onboarding is always something that takes up some time, and also a great place to build trust for the client. When you're first working with a client, you want that client to know, hey, you're on the ball.
Hmm.
So having those type of automations, those are always a good win. And then you start to work your way down, through the pipeline.
Gotcha. And if you were to give PE M&A leaders one rule, do this before you buy another tool, what is that rule that you would say?
Evaluate what you're doing. A lot of times, you're probably underutilizing your tools. Most PE
Hmm.
firms I find are only using their tools about 20-30% of what the tool can be used for.
Yeah.
And so it's better to go deeper into that tool before you find the gaps. There's a lot, we're always looking at, we're all guilty of this. Technology people, we're all guilty of looking for the next shiny thing. And sometimes the answer isn't the next shiny thing. Most likely it's not. It's usually finding that the tools that you're currently working with, you're not optimizing fully.
Gotcha. Thanks, Carl. Appreciate that in-depth answer. So where should listeners go to learn more about PE Tech Partners, and what should they do to prepare for a first conversation with you?
They can always go to my website, petechpartners.com. To prepare for me, if they would like to do it, we always offer a free half-hour consultation to a PE firm. I would say, the first things that you'd wanna know is, like, what are you unhappy with? What would you like to change? What are your goals for next year? What are you looking to achieve, and what might be getting in the way of that?
Yes.
And take it from there.
Okay. Awesome. Thank you, Carl, for joining us today. We appreciate you having you on as our
Well, it's my pleasure. Thank you for
Carl de
having me.
Prado. You're very welcome. Again,
Thank you,
we
sir.
really enjoyed your in-depth conversation on PE and mergers, so we appreciate that. Carl de Prado, PE Tech Partners on the Argosy podcast. Thank you.